we have about 5 units that are specially made for composting. So, we don't just use your typical waste industry equipment. We actually use equipment that's specifically made for composting. We are trying, like I said, to expand outside of Boston to other suburbs around us. But unfortunately, the pandemic has really affected our bread and butter businesses, which were mostly small restaurants. And unfortunately, the pandemic, like I said, has affected a lot of small, medium-sized businesses. So we've had to restructure a little bit about our target market. But Ceto's mission is to really close a whole food loop, so much so that we have plans to hopefully one day build our own compost farm, because right now we're outsourcing that process to a provider outside of Boston for the compost process. So we hope to one day have our own infrastructure so we can vertically integrate the whole food loop into Ceto. But that's Ceto Cooperative. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity and happy to hear about other co-ops around the world.
Thank you, Francisco. That was quite an interesting look at what you are doing. I apologize that in the midst of your talking, I pushed the recording button, and I hope everybody is okay with that. We do have colleagues later on asking us about the past sessions, so that would be great if we are able to share in that way. Very good. So our next speaker, whom I wanted to invite now, and as I said, please, if you have any questions for Francisco, either jot them in the chat box or ask them after our presentations. So the next presentations are colleagues from the electric cooperative, so a different type of a product, if you will, and different type of sector in which their organization operates. And I would like to invite Mr. Ronald Fisher, Executive Director of the Energy Co-op. Ronald.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for having us here today, and good day to everyone, and good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Do you want to share my PowerPoint, Barbara, or would you like me to do so?
Please, please be sure you can share it.
Okay, sure. Well, we'll see if I can.
Yes, I think you.
Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now let's start it. Okay, there we go. So I will, in the next 10 minutes, tell you about what the Energy Co-op is, what our community, who our community is comprised of, and then speak a little bit about our renewable electricity program. So the Energy Co-op is based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and we operate like Francisco's organization in a limited geographic area, which is at this point southeastern Pennsylvania. We are a nonprofit, member-owned cooperative. The Energy Co-op is our doing business as name. Our formal name is, as long as Francisco's organization, it's the Energy Cooperative Association of Pennsylvania. But we brand ourselves as the Energy Co-op. And our mission is to accelerate the transition from 20th century fuels, 19th century fuels, fossil fuels, to renewable sources as quickly as possible for our region. We currently have about 4,500 members. And the thing that we like about the cooperative business, the cooperative model for our renewable energy mission, is that it allows us to participate in the capitalist system in ways that corporations would not. We can innovate in the ways that they do not. You know, there's no return on investment for them, and sometimes we're able to take risks that reasonable investors might not in ways that help us move advance our mission. The Energy Co-op was founded in let's see, how do I advance this? The Energy Co-op was founded in 1979, originally as a heating oil co-op. We were actually founded by another co-op, a food co-op, which today has about 10,000 members, then was quite a bit smaller, but there was an oil embargo in the late 70s. Heating oil at that time was used to heat about 2/3 of the homes in the Philadelphia area. And so people, much like today, with fossil fuel prices increasing, could not afford to heat their homes. And so the folks at the Weaver's Way Food Co-op formed the Energy Co-op as a heating oil cooperative. In 1998, when the electricity market was restructured in Pennsylvania and many other states to permit third-party suppliers other than utilities to supply electricity, the Energy Co-op pivoted very quickly to renewable electricity and became the first and for many years only supplier of renewable electricity in southeastern Pennsylvania. At that time, 100% wind power. And then in the and for many years, nobody else did that. And then, as in many other states, including Massachusetts, where Francisco is, in Pennsylvania, many in the Northeast and in the West Coast, many states adopted renewable energy mandates, and we got lots of competitors. But we lead, and then others follow. And in that regard, in 2015, we became the first a supplier of renewable natural gas in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and then in 2020, just a couple of years ago, in Philadelphia proper, in Philadelphia County, the city of Philadelphia. Renewable natural gas is landfill methane that is recovered without drilling or fracking, whereas renewable electricity obviously is intended to address carbon issues. The renewable natural gas program is more focused on sustainability, number one, using a sustainable resource, one that is produced rather quickly rather than taking billions of years to develop, and then also is easily recovered without disturbance to the subsurface, to groundwater, to the air, as is the case for conventional natural gas. Our Energy Co-op community is comprised of our 4,500 members, as I mentioned. We are governed democratically. They elect our members each year at an annual meeting. This year's annual meeting is next Thursday. Elect our board of directors, and then our board of directors hires an executive director who hires everyone else. Our staff is relatively small. We have 46, as I said, we have 4,500 members, and we have at this point a 6-member staff with one intern who works for us. Our staff is comprised of myself as executive management. We have a couple of folks. Unlike many cooperatives, the industry in which we operate is a very complicated one, and one that is fraught with commodity and financial risk, and particularly in moments like these when commodity markets are particularly volatile. So we have 2 people who are what I call brainiacs, who help us understand what's going on in the market and do our market projections so that we can purchase and price properly. Then we have a couple of folks who focus on operations. Just we have to rely on a great many vendors, outside vendors, to help us operate the cooperative. And then our member services and member recruitment functions. In fact, member services, our member services manager, Noah Swistak, is on with us today. And then we have one of the things I spoke with Barbara about before a couple of weeks ago was that we try to work through, most of our competitors, and maybe some of you in the United States get a lot of these solicitations from third-party electricity suppliers who call you up on the phone, or they do direct mail, a lot of email blast and that kind of thing. We basically recruit on a missionary basis, in a sense. We're a mission-based organization, and so we get our word out by working with mission partners, which are folks that we work with to educate our community about renewable electricity and about renewable energy. about the markets. And then we also have strategic partners who are mainly other cooperatives. We try very hard to work with other cooperatives and do. We've been successful. There are several food co-ops here in Philadelphia that are quite large, and we do a number of things with them. We do joint programs with them. We do promotions for their members and vice versa, and spend a lot of time working through those strategic partners to get the word out about our mission. We also work with a great number, as I mentioned, of vendors and suppliers to help us get product to our members. And then we have our 3 programs, the heating oil program, which obviously is one that is shrinking, and justifiably so. We don't really spend a lot of money messaging that program. Some of our members question why we still have it. The fact is that it's a program that were we to abandon it, about 1,500 people in Philadelphia couldn't afford to heat their homes in the winter. They just don't have the money to convert to a more efficient, cleaner equipment. And so little by little, though, that program shrinks by about 10%. I suspect that within 4 or 5 years, that program will of its own terminate. In the meanwhile, our renewable electricity and renewable natural gas program, the 2 renewable energy programs, have expanded membership by about 15% over the last couple of years. And that's in an environment in Pennsylvania where that is not particularly renewable energy friendly. The renewable energy mandate in Pennsylvania is not very robust. We're surrounded by states that do have very robust renewable mandates: New York, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland. And so that makes our work even more interesting, challenging, true, but also we're more important than we would be in a state where the policies already favor renewable energy. Most of our members, well, let's say the plurality of our members live in Philadelphia County, about 1/3. The other 2/3 live in what we call in Philadelphia the collar counties, and then we also have there's sort of a gerrymandered looking service territory of the PPL utility that runs from Lancaster up to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and we have a few members out there. As you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, the bulk of our revenues come from the 2 renewable energy programs, and principally the renewable electricity program. Our renewable electricity program is unique in Pennsylvania. We are, as of last week or 2 weeks ago, the only provider of renewable energy that is solely produced within the state of Pennsylvania. We offer our members and the public only 100% wind and solar power. We do not engage in tricky marketing practices, and we like to hold ourselves out to the public as the sort of organization that one can trust, and that we are a nonprofit cooperative democratically run by our members. 99% wind, 1% solar, and as I said, we are now the only supplier of 100% Pennsylvania sourced options, which is to say that the power that we offer with that product is all generated in Pennsylvania. As I said, that's a rarity because we don't have very robust mandate, and so and surprisingly, even though that product is a little more costly than our other product, which is sourced from renewable energy produced in other states, most of our new enrollees sign up in that program because they want to support investment in green jobs in our state. And then, of course, we're 100% member owned by our members since 1979. Be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. This was fascinating. And I assume that the picture you are showing is the picture of the Pennsylvania vicinity where your co-op operates?
This is a wind. I don't know exactly where that wind farm is. Actually, most of the wind farms in Pennsylvania are located in the Allegheny Mountain, in the Appalachian Mountains, in the western part of the state. You know, there's a slash across the state of Pennsylvania represented by the Appalachian Mountains, and most of the wind power is either in the southwestern part of the state or the northwestern part at some elevation where wind resources are more abundant.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Well, I would like now to ask colleagues from a different type of cooperative, and these are colleagues from our own OCDC members, from among the members, and the co-op that I'm talking about is the Frontier Co-op. That specializes in spices. And I would like to ask Alicia Simmons to speak as the Corporate Social Responsibility Manager. And I think she also may have a couple of slides to show us. Alicia?
Yeah, here we go. All right. Does that look okay for everyone?
Yes, great.
All right, thank you so much for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Alicia Simmons, and I'm the Corporate Social Responsibility Manager for a natural products company called Frontier Co-op, as Barbara mentioned. Frontier is an Iowa-based member-owned cooperative that was formed in 1976. Our structure is a little unique for a co-op. Our members are actually the more than 40,000 retailers who purchase and then resell our products in their stores. So currently we have around 20,000 active members, but technically 40,000 members. I think anybody in the co-op community can kind of understand active members. But today we do have plants in Norway, North Liberty, Urbana, and Belle Plaine, Iowa. We also have an office out in Colorado, which is actually where I'm based today. We have about 600 employees for scale, and we do about 250 million in annual sales. So we are a consumer packaged goods company in the natural and organic space. We have 4 brands. Frontier Co-op and Simply Organic are the 2 sort of herb and spice and flavorings brands. Acacia is our line of essential oils, aromatherapy, and personal care products. And then our newest line is called Plant Boss. It's a brand of organic pea protein-based meal solutions. Our climate work, really, along with all of our CSR work, is really driven by our purpose statement. And that's the idea that doing good works. It's not charity. It's honestly just good business. Our work, whether it's with our supply chain partners around the world, our employees here at home, our environmental stewardship initiatives, or our giving across the US, we believe it all comes back to us through consumers who want to purchase our products and support our mission-driven work, employees who are passionate about that work and want to be a part of having a positive impact in the world, strong partnerships with our suppliers long-term. And then honestly, when it comes to environmental stewardship, it really comes back to us through cost savings. All of our environmental stewardship work that we'll talk about today goes through a traditional NPV process. And while we're able to take a longer payback because we are a co-op and our member owners believe in this work, these projects do ultimately have to have a positive return. So high level, these are sort of what we'll look at here today briefly. I'll touch on our climate approach here domestically and our plants, both through on-site solar arrays and through emissions offsets. And then we'll look at a more global approach across our supply chain in terms of investing with our partners to help them with climate resilience in their agricultural and business practices, but also investing in helping them bring raw material processing and other value-added processes back to source. So here at home in Iowa, we have on-site solar arrays installed at 3 of our 4 Iowa facilities. Altogether, they produce about 500 megawatt hours of energy per year, which is the equivalent of about 50 annual US household usages. It sounds like a lot, and it is a lot of energy, but it's only about 10% of our overall usage as a company. A big part of that is really due to significant limitations that we've experienced with our grid capacity here in rural Iowa. our rural electric cooperative simply doesn't have the infrastructure to support additional energy flow back onto the grid from our arrays. So we are constantly working with them to sort of see, what's out there and what's possible and what sort of investment needs to be made to build up that infrastructure so that we can continue to grow that renewable energy. The remaining energy that's used in our facilities is actually offset then through the purchase of renewable energy credits and verified emissions reductions. I won't get into the whole details of that because I'm sure many people on the call are familiar with them, but if you do have questions, please feel free to let me know. But the key part of that is that the premiums paid for these offsets really have to go back to that renewable energy project that generated them, and they have to continue to help them grow. It's not enough to just make sure that we're paying for the energy from them. It has to make sure that it's at an increased rate that allows that project to continue to grow and produce more energy to push back onto the grid. And this idea of sustainability and continuous improvement, I'll get to that here at the end, but that's really the common theme through everything that we do. And honestly, everything that any of us as sustainability professionals do, we really have to bear in mind that it really is this idea of continuous improvement. Just because you think you have the right answer right now, or you have the best answer for your situation right now, you might be wrong in a year or 2 years or 5 years. So it's really important to keep pushing and asking why not, as technology and policies and regulation and pricing, they all change every day. So that's our impact at home in Iowa. However, we also source botanical ingredients from over 50 countries, which means a lot of responsibility to those sourcing communities and those partners around the world. A great deal of our impact, both socially and environmentally, is within our supply chain, and a good portion of our climate-driven work is focused here as well, helping develop our sourcing partners, their businesses and communities to build agricultural and economic stability and resilience. Helping these farmers to build resilience is really fundamental to our climate action. For the most part, this includes helping diversify their crops and income streams to ensure that they won't be as heavily impacted in the event of a climate-related natural disaster. But it also helps to build soil health over time through the adoption of organic practices and, again, crop diversification. Additionally, we invest in source development projects, including helping our suppliers grow new or different crops based on changes in their annual climate or weather patterns. We try to help them adopt raw material processing and steam sterilization processes at source. This both helps them to keep more of that value-added work and the revenue associated with that work in their communities, but it also helps with our greenhouse gas emissions, and that it reduces the need for that product to travel even further for processing and then all the way to Iowa to be bottled and then out from there. It also ultimately reduces the product waste of raw materials that may be damaged during transport. This picture is actually a picture of our CEO, Tony Bedard, visiting our partner Fedicovera. They're a co-op made up of a number of smaller farming co-ops in Guatemala in the Cogon region. We worked with them several years ago to adopt a high curcumin turmeric as another crop to help them as climate was affecting their ability to grow coffee. Turmeric provided another opportunity for their farmers to produce a high value commodity that was in high demand and diversify their income. Additionally, we're in the middle of a project, as Barbara had mentioned, with USAID's Cooperative Development Program to help them help Fedicovera adopt steam sterilization and processing capabilities. Again, keeping more of that value-added work in their community at source. That is one of 3 projects we're working on right now with USAID CDP. So that's a super high level look at our climate work here at Frontier. The biggest takeaway that I always stress in these presentations, especially for organizations that are just getting started with this work, is that sustainability, again, really is this mindset of continuous improvement. When you're looking at CSR initiatives, don't let perfection be the enemy of progress. Really do what you can to have an impact where you can and when you can, and then improve from there. As a sustainability professional, your job is really never over. It's important to keep asking why not, especially when it comes to environmental stewardship. Policies, as I mentioned, and regulation and technology and pricing, they're constantly changing. So what may not have been possible 5 years ago could be possible now. You just really have to keep pushing forward and challenging yourself to think differently. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alicia. That was great. Very, very illuminating, and the perspective of a large operations, both in US and worldwide. At this point, I would like to give the floor to Shivanti from the Democracy at Work Institute. And even though Shivanti and her colleagues told me before, they don't really directly focus on climate issue, they do address very important consequences to the labor force. And obviously all the projects that we are talking about here, no matter in which sector of the economy, have impact on the workforce. And that's where the Democracy at Work Institute comes in. And we would like to ask Shivanti to please share a couple of thoughts with us. And here is the floor for you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Barbara, and appreciate the time. Good day, everyone. I'm the Senior Director at the Democracy at Work Institute, and as Barbara mentioned, we don't directly address climate change or climate impact in our work, but what we work to do is to inform and normalize worker cooperative business models, right, here in the US. We were founded by the US Federation of Worker Cooperatives to expand the field of worker cooperative development to reach communities of color, low-wage workforces, and recent immigrants. That's our mandate and mission. We do our work through consultation and partnerships, mostly with city municipalities. We also work with large institutions and business service providers across the US. Our programs are national. Our offices are headquartered in California and in New York. So some of the way that we do our work focuses on building an ecosystem of support that's needed for the growth of the worker cooperative business sector. We do this by equipping the field with tools, resources, research, and technical support so that worker cooperatives are well supported as they either start up or as they are converted from traditional businesses to worker-owned businesses. So when I thought about this topic and the challenge of addressing climate issues, we see this as fundamentally about reimagining our economy, and worker cooperatives fit into this because our workplace, our rate of production, our labor, and our ability as workers to have an impact on the environmental toll of our economic activities is tied to how much power we have in our companies, right? How much influence as workers we may have in our workplace, as well as the products we create. So an economy based on extraction or exploitation is one that obviously has led us to where we're at with our environmental challenges. A workplace that prioritizes profit and production over the health and well-being of its workers is also we're also seeing negative results, right? The physical and mental health issues faced by many of our workers. So as we do our work with municipalities, with large institutions, we operate under the assumption that if communities have control over their land, their livelihood, and their workplace, they will have a resounding effect on the exploitative and extractive practices of our traditional economy. So we in our education work, we do a lot of, we go into depth about the unique business structure of the worker cooperative and the adherence to a common set of principles. You all know about the co-op principles. In particular, we draw out certain elements of the co-op principles that essentially make the business form inherently a stronger business model that can adapt and change quickly to needs in the economy or in the environment. And we work to get city municipalities and institutions to sort of normalize and understand this model and bring resources to this model so that we can set up a healthy ecosystem for these businesses to thrive. In our work with cities in particular, we've established smart supports for cooperative business development. This is in the area of lending, impact investing, workforce development, and business service and economic development sectors. Traditionally, economic development planning often has focused on the reallocation of businesses or hiring incentives and attracting businesses to their location. And oftentimes there's a mismatch when economic development agencies focus on attracting large businesses, but at the expense of neglecting community aspirations. And so this can lead to an investment in the wrong types of businesses or the wrong types of economic activities. So in our work with cities, we've oftentimes focused on local small businesses and seeing worker cooperatives as a way to reimagine how small businesses can be supported and how ownership can be transferred to workers over time. And in particular, retaining local businesses in the community and those important services in the community. I think I'll stop there, Barbara. I feel like I'm about at time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I would like at this point to invite everyone to make comments or ask questions. I have several already put into the chat. So maybe I'll start with one of those that is in the chat already, and then please everyone raise your hand, let us know how you would like to ask the question. So this one here is a question to Francisco from the Cerro Cooperative, and the colleague who calls attention to the fact that the pandemic has put to test the resiliency of your co-op. And can you comment on how the member benefits were impacted? This is something that Shivanthi has been talking about, the impact on the workers, on the members of the co-op, and how and what do you plan to do for the organization to be better prepared in the future?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. Very important. So unfortunately, during the pandemic, although I wasn't working with the cooperative at the time, through what I have researched, we did unfortunately have to let go one worker owner during the pandemic. But actually, our solution to that was restructuring our pricing model to reflect the inflation costs that we've been seeing. And we were fortunate enough to be able to hire that third driver back again. Not the same one, unfortunately, but we are up to 3 drivers right now. Some of those drivers, not all of them are worker owners. Only one of them is, because second one lives out of state, unfortunately, and that denies him the opportunity to be a worker owner. Something that I've been researching on, how we can pass a policy to allow workers to become owners, even if they don't become even if they don't live in the state, right? And our third driver, CDL driver, he actually just started with us. So yeah, unfortunately, we were quite hit by the pandemic. Our fixed costs went up considerably, but we have rebounded, thankfully, and we had to restructure with some of our biggest clients like Boston University and Northeastern, and thankfully they worked with us to restructure that. So we're on the up and up, coming up and rebounding from the pandemic. But yeah, great question.
Thank you. Another question that came through was directed to Ron, and it's a more specific one, which I will read exactly. Are you buying from are you buying the RECs and VERs from US or from your global partner?
Yeah, we buy all of our offsets domestically in the US. So best practice typically with offsets is to keep them as close to your facilities as possible to where you're actually having that impact. So you're having that offset impact in the same place that you're operating. So yeah, domestically is the short answer.
Thank you. Thank you. Ron, did you?
Yeah, I had a follow-up question for Alicia. Talk to us a little bit about the VERs that you're purchasing, where they're sourced, what kinds of environmental benefits those are offering.
Yeah, definitely. So the key difference between renewable energy credits and verified emissions reductions is that, which you know, Ron, I'm sure, is basically RECs come from energy generation, basically clean energy generation, versus VERs are really focused on actually pulling carbon, or I should say, reducing the carbon impact of an operation. So things like landfill, methane reclamation facilities would be a VER. We have historically been using purchasing VERs primarily from the southern Minnesota area from a methane reclamation facility there. More recently, we have had, anybody who's been purchasing offsets in the last year or so knows that market has gone insane. So we've kind of looked a little bit further out, but still within the US. For those VERs and RECs in the last year. So I actually am due to renew our contracts for those right now. So it's on my to-do list for today. Good question though.
Great, great. Thank you. I have another question, which is directed basically to all three of or four of our guests, and that reflects on the role of education and educating not only the members but also the partners and clients and the whole spectrum of organizations that work with you. How important is that education element in your work, and what are the tips or the successful commentary that you could suggest in doing the educational outreach?
Barbara, I can jump in on that question. This is Shivanthi with Dowie. Education and training is a major component of our work, and as we there's no expectation that as we work with institutions that service, say, cities or lenders, that they have any interest in worker-owned cooperatives. So the first step for us is educating and normalizing the model, right? Letting people know how employee ownership models benefit both the business as well as the community. Outside of that sort of normalization approach, what we've found most effective is to create approaches that could be folded into existing programs. And so, for example, with cities, we created a playbook that essentially walked them through 5 different approaches they could utilize and plug into their existing toolkit. So we don't make the assumption that that folks are going to be on the bandwagon for employee ownership just because we go in and educate them. We have to actually make it relevant to their needs and make it simplify the approach so that they can fold it into existing programming. That's our low-hanging fruit, right? And then ideally, we work towards the goal of ensuring that it's institutionalized, its approach, it has staffing and capacity and built into a department. But generally speaking, when we first do our early layer of education, it's really about how do we dovetail it into existing programs and make it easy for institutions to adopt.
Great comment, good advice. Alicia, would you like to also comment?
Yeah, actually, I also wanted to point out, Shimati had made a great point about the importance of working with community to identify first a project that's appropriate and specific and unique to that community. Really listening to your partners and understanding what need is out there and helping them to address that specific need is really important. You can't take this sort of prescriptive approach and say, this is the project that we're going to do in every community that we work in, because every community is very different and has very unique needs. Additionally, you have to keep, there's also a learning curve on our side where we have to make sure as we're picking up these projects that we're listening and we're evolving and adapting as needed. These projects are multiple year-long projects, so it's very important that, you know, just because we set out to do one thing doesn't mean that that's ultimately what it will end up looking like necessarily. It's important to keep those same goals in mind, but the timeline and the processes might change a lot. But as far as the importance of education, you know, there's a lot of it. There's a huge education component, especially again with our projects at source, not only around, you know, processes and food safety and human safety and things like that, but also the importance of representation and equity in a truly responsible and sustainable business model. So trying to sort of have that balance between making sure that we're addressing that community specific issue, but also ensuring that we're helping to teach them, you know, business practices that will help them be successful for decades to come, hopefully. It's an incredibly important part of it.
Thank you. Ronald.
Yes, it's one of the two principal ways that we advance our mission. One is by supplying renewable energy, and the other is by educating our community about it. There are many components. Starting in-house, we have an internship program that NOAA runs for us, where we bring in usually 2 college seniors or graduate students every 4 months for 4-month internships. And it's a very intense, it's not a make work internship. It's a very intense program where we, number one, teach them about our business specifically, but then also a much broader education about hands-on education about the renewable energy industry generally, so that, you know, it's something on their resume if they decide. And many, you know, very often these are students who are majoring in environmental studies. You know, they can go into the job market with a very good understanding and a head start on their competition with renewable energy companies. We also work through our strategic and our mission partners. We distinguish those two. Mission partners are folks that we work with simply for purposes of educating, working with them to educate our community. There's an organization called Philadelphia OIC that retrains workers into 21st century jobs like solar installations or work in the solar industry. And we work with them and present several modules for them each year. And then our strategic partners, other co-ops, we're always doing webinars with them, workshops with them, again, to educate their members, for them to educate our members about their sustainability practices. And so it really is, it's a hand in glove in terms of how we operate the cooperative. Very important.
Francisco, would you like to add? You work with the universities. You mentioned universities and other community organizations. What is the response when you approach them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Education is a very critical component of what we do. So much so that we have, whenever we finalize a contract, we do hands-on training, which I carry out as well, and bilingual in Spanish as well, so that we can avoid any contamination, because that's what differentiates Settle from other current waste providers in the industry, that they allow a huge amount of contamination in their food waste because it ends up in the landfill, right? Whereas we actually re-earth it, right? Or bring it to an animal feed farm. So we're very, very big on the educational aspect of composting. We actually have a program with a regional high school where we're training high schoolers to how to divert food waste, right? So they're there at the bin, at the barrel, and they're training other students about what is compostable and what is not, and the importance of it, right? So education is definitely a big component of what Settle does in the community and with our clients as well. Mhm.
Thank you. I have another question here in the chat, which I want to read. This is from our colleagues in the Philippines. And it says, I wonder if we can be given copies of the business models of the 3 presentations related to climate mitigation. Philippine cooperatives and federations can learn from your success. Would you like to comment? Any one of you would like to comment on this?
Sure, I'll comment on how we structure our pricing, our financial models. I believe I mentioned that we are actually going through a restructuring right now of our pricing to reflect the inflation costs that we're seeing for equipment mostly, because we do use, for example, bio bags on these barrels. We line them up with bio bags that are decompostable, and those bio bags have gone up significantly in price. So right now, our pricing structure is now reflecting the industry standard. We used to have an all-inclusive model where we had one fee for picking up, and that included as many barrels. Now we charge per pickup and we charge per barrel as well. And that's completely different financial model from the soil delivery that we do to urban farms. So right now it's based, like I said, per pickup and per tote. That's how we charge, or per barrel. And that's our current financial model that we just restructured this 2022. Mhm.
Thank you. Well, in general response, I will definitely share following our session all the presentations and all the comments that that are being made. We still have a couple minutes, not very much, but still 4 minutes till 9:30. So please, anyone else who would like to join and ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand, and here is the opportunity.
I have a question for Ronald, actually, if that's okay. Have you had any interest, or have you heard any interest in your area around community solar projects that folks are able to buy into? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, community solar is basically a construct that permits folks who couldn't put solar panels on their roof or don't have a property, that's large enough to accommodate, like your facility there in Iowa, Alicia, don't have the land to do so. What a community solar is legislatively enabled construct that allows, say, a neighborhood or a community to fund the construction of a solar array nearby that then would power the homes and the businesses in that area, and not only allow folks to purchase electricity. It's less expensive now to install renewable than natural gas or other generation. So you not only get the benefit of lower cost electricity, you get the benefit of ownership of the array, or collective ownership of the array. Where Francisco lives in Massachusetts, there's a very robust community solar program there. New Jersey has statutes there. Pennsylvania does not. We have a lot of oil and gas and coal in Pennsylvania, and so the legislature hasn't yet enabled that kind of construct. The interesting thing is that the energy co-op, with our 3,500 renewable energy members, is in a position to actually create a sort of virtual community solar system, because we could theoretically purchase a solar array and then spread the benefits of that through our membership. We did an RFP about 18 months ago to try to do that, but Pennsylvania is in Pennsylvania, we could, from a financial point of view, do that kind of thing if we bought the power from, say, we bought a Virginia located array. But in Pennsylvania, we can't make it work for us and for the investors in that array, just simply because the incentives aren't strong enough in Pennsylvania. I don't know if I answered your question, Alicia, but that's the.
Yeah, it's such an interesting idea that I feel like it's kind of growing popularity, and I think it's great for folks to know about as an option.
Absolutely, and it really is the future, I think, of solar, because there's so many more people who can't install solar arrays on, just don't have the rooftop, live in apartment buildings, or their orientation of their roofs is the wrong way. So yeah, it definitely is, and it's been it's worked very, very well in places like Massachusetts and New Jersey.
Well, I thank you very much, everyone, our speakers, our guests, our audience, colleagues who joined in from different parts of the world. It's 9:30, so it's time to close and say goodbye, good evening, good morning. Have a wonderful day and wonderful rest of the day, everyone, and see you in August for our next bi-monthly meeting. I will send out announcements. I'm not yet sure what it's going to be about, but we will find interesting and applicable to our work themes to talk about. Thank you, everyone. Bye.